Hello, Aliyah. Welcome, welcome. Hello, Shaul. Welcome. Welcome back. Can you hear me? Am I being heard? Hello?
Hello.
Can you hear
I
me?
can hear you. Yes.
You could hear me. Oh, okay, good.
Yes, I can.
Hello, Aliyah.
Hi, how are you?
Baruch Hashem, doing good. How are you?
Baruch Hashem.
Fantastic,
Getting in
fantastic.
the mood of Purim.
I see. All righty. It's actually a good time because today, halachically, not prevalent halacha, but in the Mishnah times, today would be the first day possible to read the Megillah for people which need it. So throughout the
What?
ages, the 11th day of Adar, which is today, is seen already as the entry into Purim. So it's a good time.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah. Welcome back, Shaul. Good to have you back. And Leslie, of course, welcome back. Rabbi Yaakov Yehuda. And Davida is with us. And Avigail. And Aviel, I take it.
Everyone is here.
Everyone together. And Moshe also?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay, this is tough. A lot of pressure over here today. All right. Gotta behave myself.
I'm only here as a few moments. Don't worry about
Oh, until
I'm
I
waiting
say
for
something
tonight.
wrong.
it. I'm
Until
waiting
I
for
say something
tonight.
wrong. You're here to. All right. You're gonna fact check me. Ay, ay, ay. All right. I'm glad I prepared extra today. What an honor. Oh, okay. Wait, Moshe, does this mean tonight we're off?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. We're on.
Okay. Hello, Linda. Liba's with us. And Richard is here. Okay, let's jump right into today's Chumash. Yesterday we did quite a rushed learning, so today we're going to try to take it a little more laid back, a little bit more thorough. So I'm going to share with you the screen, and let's get a quick vote. Let's get a quick vote. I guess you could use the reactions. Well, there's a lot of reactions today. You can either clap your hands or thumbs up. If you liked better, which pictures did you like better? If you liked the like pencil ones, like each detail, more like school-like, clap your hands. If you like the Kahat Chumash pictures better, which we used primarily yesterday, thumbs up. Or we could do both. Thumbs up. We have one for the Kahat Chumash. We have three for the Kahat Chumash. Well, Leslie, that's two. Okay. Or you're doing for both. Okay. All right. Looks like Richard is going for
Yes.
Oh, okay. So Leslie was going for both. Aliyah, you're the only one going for the pencil ones, primarily.
I'm a kid.
You like those? Okay, fine. Well, I did find them yesterday for our parsha as well. So I guess I'll just give everyone a taste of what they're missing, basically, because I found them. All right, here goes. This is, well, I actually also found a slideshow. A lot of fun stuff to show you today. All right, if we have time. Let me pull up what I have for you today. And then we'll, okay. So we'll start with the Kahat Chumash pictures, and then perhaps at the end or in middle, we'll take over those. We'll show you a little bit of the other pictures and perhaps a slideshow, because we do kind of wrap up the clothing of the high priest, of the Kohen Gadol today, and of the Kohen today, the regular Kohen, called the Kohen Hetyot. Okay, there we go. So here we have the Kahat Chumash. I just want to show you before we start the details. This is how the Kohen Gadol is going to look at the end of the day. All right, at the end of today's learning, we're gonna dress, like they have those games like dress the doll kind of thing. So we're gonna dress the Kohen Gadol, Lahavdil, with all of these ornaments. So if you'll notice, yesterday we focused primarily on the Choshen Mishpat, on the breastplate, which we see where it is now. So in its full picture, in its fullness, we talked a lot about. If I could make this picture a little bigger. It's not complying. All right. We talked a lot about the intricate details here of how it was connected to the top shoulder straps and how it was connected to the bottom. We know we also focus on a little bit less, but we talked about the 12 stones, and I did share with you that there's many more layers to go into in the Choshen Mishpat. perhaps for another time, if we have time this week, please God. We talked about the ephod. We talked about this apron, which goes along the back of the Kohen Gadol and is tied around and does show up at the front of him as well. So it's pretty much clear, I would think, from these pictures here. So that's the front and the back of the Kohen Gadol. That's the two garments, the choshen and the ephod, the apron. Today we're going to discuss the other 6 garments. Okay, so we're going to first of all talk about the me'il. The me'il is going to be this undergarment, if you will. It is blue, kind of looks bluish here. It's going to be right under the choshen mishpat, right under the ephod. So it's the next garment under. It's what you see here with sleeves. There is a debate whether it came with sleeves or it was sleeveless. Either way, there was another garment beneath this which did have sleeves. So whether the sleeves are the actual part of this piece or the actual part of a deeper garment closer to his skin, that's a question. But here it shows it with the sleeves. And it's pretty much a solid blue garment. And if you'll notice on the bottom, and then I'll take us to the picture which just has this garment, on the bottom of this me'il, of what's called the me'il, in English it's called the robe, you'll notice there's these, like something on the bottom here, something going on, some kind of design of a whole situation here. And we're going to learn today that those are the pomegranates and the bells. 36 pomegranates, 36 bells, 72 total of these clickety-clackety. The bells were golden. The pomegranates were wool material. And it was basically on the shallow level to announce the Kohen Gadol's entry. When you heard the Kohen Gadol coming, when the Kohen Gadol was coming, you heard him. So you knew to show proper respect. And also, the Talmud actually tells us, halachically, there's a very important significance in that when you walk into your home, even your own home, how much more so someone else's home, you should make noise before. Knock. Don't just walk in. It's very interesting. So just to announce your arrival, even if you're going to walk right in afterwards, you don't have to wait for someone to open the door for you if it's your own home, but at least to knock. So there's a thing to knock before walking into your own house, not to surprise anybody. So that's definitely how we learned that actually from the Kohen Gadol wearing these bells and making lots of noise. We'll learn a lot more, many layers, hopefully, into these bells and pomegranates as well as we go through the actual verses. So that's what we see here. So you see the robe kind of goes all the way to his heels. And let's go up a little bit and see this garment for what it's worth on its own. There you see it. There you have it. This is the robe. And that's going to be the garment we discuss first in today's Chumash. And then we'll go on to the rest of the garments, the other 5 that I will share with you. Okay, let's take it away. Let's start with the Chumash. Let me open up there we have it. Today is the 3rd reading for the 11th of Adar of Parshas Tetzaveh, Exodus chapter 28, verse 31. Va'asisa es me'il ha'ephod klil tcheles. Oh, just before we actually start the verses, yesterday's questions I did not get to yet, but I do have them, I believe, stored on my computer. So I'm going to reply to them, please God. I apologize for the delay. But again, if there's any questions on today's Chumash, please do interrupt and ask away. You can always unmute yourself, or you can put it onto the chat, and either I will go through them at the end. Usually I leave it for a later time when I can reply to you individually. Okay, without further ado, verse 31, Lamed Aleph. V'asisa es me'il ha'ephod klil tcheles. Now you are to make the me'il. The me'il is the robe, and it's called the robe of the ephod being the apron we discussed yesterday, simply because it was the article of clothing which the apron was tied around. Right, so the apron was tied around, as we saw in the picture, this me'il, this robe, which is klil tcheles, and it's actually interesting. So it's a completely blue garment, blue wool. The Baal HaTurim tells us a wonderful gematria, numerical value, that the word me'il, the word for, well, actually he points this out interestingly on our verse, but the word ephod, not the word me'il. The word ephod, which is the apron, is the same numerical value as malach, as angel. And this just brings out what we spoke about quickly yesterday, how all the clothing of the high priest was to make him look angelic. So it's actually in the numerical value of the word ephod. Ephods were also worn primarily by, the aprons were primarily worn by prophets. We have Samuel, Shmuel had a special apron of sorts. So it has that prophetic look, the angelic look, the holier look. It gave that holier look to you. So that was, that's in the ephod. Yeah, let's move on to the robe itself. Rashi points out, as we said, there's nothing else mixed into it. It's completely blue. Now, just as a note, the Medrash does tell us that this robe was there to atone for the sin of Lashon Hara. Now, it's interesting that there's going to be the 8 garments that we talked about were there to atone, to kind of calm down the consequences of 8 specific sins, which the Medrash points out that the God saw what the Jews would suffer from most, the 8 big sins of the day during temple times, and so God predated he gave the medicine first by giving the Kohen Gadol these 8 garments with which he would provide atonement to kind of balance out the wrath, so to speak, to kind of calm down the consequences which would come out. So the robe that we're talking about today was actually there to atone for the sin of Lashon Hara, of speaking ill about another person. We know that's a big sin even today, and lots of different organizations that primarily deal with that. But it's a good thing to stay away from. It's important to stay away from, and it's a tough one. So this was the robe. But the reason why the robe is going to be symbolic, we'll see, of Lashon Hara, we'll see in the next verse. So verse 32 tells us that, interestingly, the top of of this robe was going to be with inside. So let me show you. Now I'm going to show Aliyah. This is for you and Yaakov Yehuda. This is a picture from our pencil. Okay, so you'll notice this is the robe. Okay. So here they show you here a little bit better. I don't know. I thought this was a little better at least. It's just interesting design that they make it for you. But you'll notice that the collar is gonna be folded inwards, and it's bent inside, and it's gonna be woven together, and therefore not able to be ripped. Okay, I don't know if it's that clear from the right picture or the left picture, but it's a little bit more zoomed into. Okay, so we're going to talk about that. The way the pasuk refers to it in verse 32 is safa yelefiv saviv, that the top, the collar piece, should be inwards, going around, folded together. And it's actually fascinating. I found it fascinating that there's a commentary on the Chumash, the Rashbam, who is usually referred to as Rashi's grandson, if I remember correctly, unless it's a different Rashbam. But he actually says lahavdil, which means not to connect with anything impure, but something is similar, if you wanted to imagine, like the collars of those worn by the galachim, which are priests. So it's interesting from the age-old, I guess they have the same type of collar cut without any, just what I saw in camp plays. Okay, it should be the likes of a coat of armor. Yeah, I think somebody on Facebook that joins us was in the army, so perhaps he can help us out in explaining that. Welcome everybody on Facebook. So there is a prohibition over here that collar may not be torn. And the commentators have a field day with this verse about how this is symbolic of Lashon Hara, but we'll just touch on that a little bit. And that is that you notice the word mouth is actually said in this verse. The piv saviv, the word piv, the word is a mouth, also here refer to the opening. The mouth is the opening of the at the top where the neck is put into. So it's in simple terms, or in the very shallow, it's referring to the opening, the collar that has to be inwards and woven together. But on a more symbolic of it is that it's here to help out, or to what's the proper word, to atone, I guess, in a certain way for the sin of Lashon Hara. So it's about closing up the mouth. It's about closing the mouth, putting a double inside, like keeping our mouths inside, keeping our mouths shut at the right times, and make sure it doesn't rip open. It doesn't get opened with speaking wrong things. So that's embedded into the meaning of this verse, and how important it is to stay away from using our mouth for ill talk. Yeah. Okay. Rashi points out pretty much what we spoke about, how we're talking about the collar at the neck should be doubled inwards, woven and not sewn with a needle. Rashi points out that we learned from here about the coats of armor, that they had an opening folded inward. So a little hint that you could learn everything from the Torah, even how to make stuff for battles. Okay, so Rashi points out that the fact that the Torah says it should not be ripped is actually telling us a prohibition, and this is listed in one of the 630 commandments, that this collar should not be ripped. Okay, verse 33. Vasisa al shulav. Here we get to the bottom of this robe. On the bottom is going to be, on the bottom hem, rimoinei tchelas v'agamos la'ashan is going to be pomegranates, not actual pomegranates, but shaped like pomegranates. Rashi says that they were round, hollow, like chicken eggs. So something round like. Here the Torah calls them pomegranates. The idea is that it's made out of different materials: bluish wool, purplish wool, reddish wool, al-shulav saviv, going all around the hem. And golden bells should go inside. Again, the idea of bells is also the idea, like a bell has an opening with the clickety-clack tongue inside. So it also is about using our tongues for the right things. So again, seeing in the garment symbolism to using our mouth for the right things. I'll show you the Kahat Chumash, which got the larger vote. So here you have pretty much what it looked like on the bottom. Okay, so you have the woolen look-alike pomegranates, and then in between each one was a bell. It's actually a debate if this is how it looked. This is the way Rashi puts it. There's Nachmanides has a different view, but we'll stick to this. So again, this was to make noise. A lot of symbolism is in this as well. The fact that a pomegranate represents a Jew, which is, the Talmud says, even the sinners amongst Israel are full of mitzvahs like a pomegranate. So the pomegranate became the fruit. Jewish people are generally seen as different fruits throughout Tanakh. The pomegranate represents the Jews, which are sinners, full of sinners. And nevertheless, the Torah is telling us that the pomegranate Jews need to be part of the Kohen Gadol when he's serving God. He can't leave them behind. Also, that's brought out by the fact that there's a lot of noise made by them. The Baal Shem Tov said once to his students that if you notice a person, somebody asked him basically, why is it the Hasidim, when they pray, there's a lot of noise going on? And a lot of shaking, right? A lot of shaking, and it doesn't work so well on Zoom, but there's a lot of shuckling and noise, and different Hasidic sects, you'll see more noise, more movement. And the idea that the Baal Shem Tov explains, when someone's drowning, they're not very still. There's a lot of movements, so a person recognizes that they're drowning in worldly matters, and they're trying to stay afloat, connected to a lifeline. That's the noise making that we're doing by prayers. So again, this also represents the Jew on a deeper level, represents the Jew which is not at peace necessarily with God, or not even have returned to God, but still in the struggle. They're still in the struggle, right? Like in Tanya, the struggle is where it's all at. And so those Jews as well, that are still struggling with their belief in God, still struggling with the understanding why God did this, and didn't come yet to terms with God. They're still very noisy. There's a lot of battle within themselves. They're also part of the high priest. They're also, if the high priest, we're going to learn, comes in without them, then he's he's got to be put to death. This is like essential to the high priest. The high priest is the one that represents the Jewish people. He can't leave these Jews out. And this was brought out by the pomegranates and the noise making on the bottom of his garment. Also, the fact that it's at the bottom represents also, we're talking about sinners, which usually if you put people on ladders, they're at the bottom of the rung. Nevertheless, they're as essential and part of the service. Okay, so that is some symbolism important to remember. Let's see the Rashis. So Rashi points out we're talking about the material, round, hollow pomegranates. The bells have the tongues inside, and the golden bells. And Rashi says, "B'soicham saviv," they're in between. So you notice from the verse, it could be either that the bell. Think about it. If the pomegranate is hollow, what's stopping you from putting the bell inside the pomegranate? Right. So that's one opinion, and that's why if you read the verse, it says the golden bells in their midst. So it could be inside the pomegranate. Rashi says no, beinehem saviv, in between them. It just also to me it brings out again how Rashi is not just helping us along with translating the verse. Rashi is at when it seems like something so perhaps so simple, something that's obvious, he's really taking on different opinions and telling us the opinion that he believes is the Pshutei Shel Mikra. So it's something that we not necessarily would appreciate unless we see the other commentators and how they interpret the verse. Okay, so Rashi makes that point. Verse 34, welcome to Sharon. Welcome back, Sharon. Today we're learning all about the robe. I think the robe was yours from yesterday.
Yes.
Look at that.
I'm
Okay,
sorry
so
I'm
we're in
late,
the middle.
Mandy, but I'm just in.
No problem. But we're in the middle of the robe, so you came in good timing.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Let's see verse 34. Again, we have the golden bell, the pomegranate going all around the bottom of the hem. And Rashi again points out that the pomegranate is next to the bell, not that the bell is inside the pomegranate. Interestingly enough, we talked about how this robe in its entirety is there to stop us from, or to atone for the sin of speaking ill about another, of lashon hara, of gossip. And the truth is that the Talmud actually counts 72 types of different types of tsaras. Tsaras was that spiritual malady which came upon people when they spoke ill about another. And the 72 types of tsaras were kind of mitigated, is that the word? Balanced out with the 72 bells and pomegranates that went all around the hem of this me'il, of this robe. Okay, so that's that. And actually the Baal HaTurim points out lastly that the wording in this verse of 34, it sounds a little bit perhaps extra. We already talked about the golden, but nothing is extra. The actual numerical value of these words, he tells us zahav v'rimayin pamayin zahav v'rimayin al, gives us these words over here are actually the numerical value of heim shivim ushtayim. These are 72. So we actually, although the verse doesn't actually tell us how many there are, if we see it in numerical value, these are 72. So these 6 words are the numerical value of this word 72 in Hebrew. It's not, okay, so shivim ushtaim, spell that out. It's going to be a lot of numbers. Okay, verse 35. Haya al arin l'shares. So we finish off with the robe. It should be on Aaron when he's serving in the temple. V'nishma koilai, his sound will be heard. As we spoke about on the basic level, this was to announce his entry. B'voyei l'kodesh, when he comes to the holy of Hashem, b'v'tzeisai, and when he leaves, v'lo yamos, and he will not die. Rashi points out, we understand that if he will not die, if he's doing the right thing, then we understand the opposite applies if he's doing the wrong thing. What would be the wrong thing? The wrong thing would be walking into the temple to serve with missing one of these clothings, one of the 8 garments in total. He would be liable for death in the hands of heaven. And one of the commentators actually points out that God, throughout the Torah, there's a lot of this term, and you will not die, and you will not die. And Rashi always points out, or many times points out, we understand that if you do the wrong thing, then it's the opposite effect. But the way that Torah, God in his compassion, is spelling it out is is with the limud schus, is always giving us the positive what's the word? Always giving us the bending to positivity.
Incentive.
Incentive? No, not an incentive, Sharon. I'm looking for
Inspiration.
no. When you give somebody that the positivity of doubt, I'm going to missing the word. Hello, Irma. Welcome. Okay.
Positivity of doubt.
No, I'm not saying it right, Sharon. I'm gonna give you the.
Okay, the meaning.
Anyways, I'm gonna look at it. I'm gonna think if I see you doing something, and I'm not sure if it's positive or negative. So I'm gonna
Give you the benefit of the doubt.
benefit of the doubt. Thank you. Okay, benefit of the doubt. So God is saying, I'm gonna give everyone the benefit of the doubt. V'lo yamos, they're not gonna die. They're gonna do things right. They're not gonna die. That's how God is using it. Thank you, Irma. Okay, Lamed Vav. So that is the robe. It's in its entirety, with all the bells and the rings and the golden bells. Sorry, the bells and the pomegranates, and that is pretty much it. The next garment we're going to learn about is the tzitz. The tzitz, we'll see over here, is the forehead plate. Oh, did we miss it in the pictures? Here it is. Okay, so this is what it looks like. It's going to be literally on his forehead, golden plate of sorts. It's going to be 2 fingers long. We're going to find out this way, kind of thing, to go from ear to ear. Rashi will point out, and it's going to be tied to his head from 3 different places. The top, here you have it on the bottom picture. That's pretty much stick his head in there. All right, so it's almost like you're putting on those big glasses, like 3D glasses. You ever did that? All right, so that's how it was strapped on. It wasn't Velcro. No. Okay, we'll find out more. But the fascinating thing is what was written on this forehead plate is the words Kodesh LaHashem. But this is the way it was actually written. It was written backwards, which means holy is to God, but it was actually going to be because the name of God is holier than the word Kodesh, so the name of God gets top priority. One thing that the Talmud tells us is, and we're going to see in the verses, is that this was the Kohen Gadol had to make sure to always be aware of this being on his forehead, and therefore, according to some opinions, had to constantly touch it, or at least to keep it in mind that this was on his forehead. And the Talmud says that if this applied to the golden plate which had God's name once, how much more so to those of us that wear tefillin every day? When wearing tefillin, we have to keep in mind that the tefillin are on us, and we should behave accordingly. And therefore, there is a thing in halacha to constantly touch the tefillin while we're wearing them, to remember that they're on and to behave accordingly. What was the tzitz here to atone for? We're going to learn here. Well, you can't really see it in the picture, but you see it's on his forehead over there. All right. That this middle piece here is the strap that's going to go around his hat. You'll notice in the back, the strap comes on the back, and then it's tied together with the other 2 straps, and it's tied in the back like that. There's going to be a little space between the tzitz, between this golden plate and his hat, that his tefillin can stick out. Now, if this strap was in the middle, where did the tefillin exactly go? I don't know. It's a good question. But the tefillin were supposed to be somewhere in between there. This being on his forehead, we already learned last week, or last week. I think, Richard, this was your part. What's the forehead have to do with anything? Richard, do we remember what the forehead has to do with anything? Anybody remember? The forehead has to do with chutlath, brazenness. Remember? It's actually if you notice, when someone's like firm to do something, their forehead scrunches together. So that's the firmness. It could be used in the negative, stubbornly doing what I want, and I couldn't care less what God wants. But the positive is to stick stubbornly to our inspiration that we have in the morning. That Eva points out, we wake up with inspired, we say Moda'ani, we're ready, and then we kind of lose that inspiration. But if we stick to it with a stubbornness, that's the way we kind of channel it for the good, the stubborn Jewish spirit. But this forehead plate is going to be there to atone for the sins which come from stubborn ideals. Says verse 36, this golden plate should be made out of pure gold. It should be engraved on it with the letters actually protruding. outwards, the words Kodesh La Hashem. Holy is to Hashem. And Rashi again points out it's 2 fingers going from ear to ear. So this is a long, long Rashi, which basically he explains what we saw in the picture. He takes from different verses throughout the Torah that talk about this tzitz, talk about this golden plate, and creates a contradiction, because in one place it says that the plate should be on his forehead. Another place it says it should be on his hat. Another place it says it should be on top of the string. Another place it says it should be under the string. So how exactly does it all work out? So basically the picture pretty much helps us out, because at the same time that the forehead plate itself was on his forehead, the strap was on his hat. At the same time that one strap was on top of the forehead plate, another strap was on the bottom. So the plate was on top of one strap and it was on the bottom of another strap of the flip side. So that looped around. And so therefore he kind of puts together all the contradictions and really works them out, that this is the way it worked. So there you have it in the picture. Let's move back to the next verse. Should be on Aaron's forehead. With this, Aaron will also forgive. He will carry the forgiveness, or carry the sin of which sin here? Besides for the brazenness that we talked about, there's also a specific sin having to do with the temple, and that is, as Rashi will point out, if a sacrifice was brought while the animal was actually impure, which is the wrong thing to do. It should not be done. Don't try it at home. But if that actually happened, if the tzitz is so, the tzitz itself will atone for it, and it will make it kosher. Meaning, once the animal is sacrificed, is slaughtered rather, and its blood is already spritzed on the altar, and the fats are burnt on the altar, there's not much more you can do. And then you find out, oh, that animal was impure. What are you going to do? So the tzitz was there to kind of make it kosher for slaughter, despite the fact that usually an impure animal, if you knew beforehand, would not be allowed to go ahead with doing the rites on it. It should be on his forehead always, to appease before them, to appease for the Jewish people before God. So there's actually a debate whether this tzitz had to actually be on his forehead always, or can he go to sleep? Imagine trying to go to sleep with a golden plate on your forehead. So the truth is that it's not just about sleep, but in general, did the priests have to wear their holy clothing at all times, or could they change into like Sunday clothing, pajamas? So there's actually a discussion about it. I want to know where pajamas are discussed in the Talmud. I could tell you the page. There's everything is there. So, but the idea is that here there's a debate whether, the point being, definitely he's taking it off. The question is, does it atone for the sins when it's off, or only when it's on? So according to one opinion, even when it's off, still, the fact is that it's considered to be there permanently, and it does its trick always. According to the other opinion, which says only when it's on, it does its trick. So he learns out from this verse that the truth is, when it's on you, you got to constantly touch it, as we talked about before, to remember that it's there. And we learned from that to the tefillin as well, to constantly remember that it's there. Let's move on to the next garment, verse 39. Vishibatsta haksainas sheish. Here we move on to the ketoinus. Ketoinus was the tunic. The tunic is going to be, you're not going to see it. If you're looking at a picture now of the full Kohen Gadol, fully dressed, you're not going to see this next garment. The next garment was considered like a long undershirt. So, of course, it's under. This is a picture of a regular Kohen who only had 4 garments. And we'll learn about that soon. So he only had a long undershirt on. So for him, it was his top shirt as well. But the Kohen Gadol had this on his skin, and then above that the robe, and above that the apron and the breastplate. So there you go. That's a better picture of it. Here you have the tunic. Over here, you'll notice that it's checkered. What was the tunic there to atone for? Anybody remember where else in the Torah we have a tunic, a ketonet? Where else in the Torah, earlier in Genesis, one of the stories, we have a tunic? We have Joseph and his multicolored tunic, right? The ketones pasim. So actually, there is a connection. And the idea is that this was going to provide atonement for murder, which is something that the brothers pretended had happened to Joseph with the multicolored tunic, which they dipped into animal's blood. So that's here we have that made out of linen. The next garment they gotta make is we move on to the hat. So we saw a picture of the hat. This is the mitznefes, the turban. It's gotta be wounded around his head, kind of thing. That's the picture. And the afnate, and then the next garment is the belt. Tasamasi should be made out of embroidery work. The belt, as you see over here, it's very long. It actually was 32 amos long. 32 amos, that's about, it's a lot. It's like 50 feet. And he just kept on going around and around and around till so you can imagine it was big. It was big, but the 32 is symbolic of Lev, of the heart, and it was put by his heart. It's actually interesting. The gartel that we wear in our custom, it's for married men. Wear a gartel. You'll notice on Shabbos should also be closer to the heart. Usually gets a little bit, falls a little lower. But you'll notice pictures of the Rebbe, especially, has his gartel very high up. It's the right place to go usually. So similar to this idea of the long belt. Rashi points out should be made checkered and out of linen. So now we move on to verse 40. So if we think about it, which garments did we already cover for the high priest? Anybody want to tell me? Well, we have to count eight. How many did we already discuss for the high priest of the 8 garments? Anybody want to tell me one? Going for one. We already talked about the apron. We talked about the breastplate, the choshen mishpat. That was both yesterday. Today we talked about the next one was the robe, right? Then we went on from the robe, we went and talked about the golden plate, the forehead plate, the tzitz. Then from there, we went to talk about the hat, the turban. And then from there, we went to talk about, so that's 5. From there, we went to talk about the belt, that's 6, long belt. Which, by the way, the belt also you're not going to see by the high priest. It was under the belt that he's wearing is going to be not this belt. This belt is part of the actual ephod, part of the actual apron. The belt is under the robe. You can imagine a lot of layers. For the actual Kohen hedyot, for the regular Kohen, that was what he wore over here on top of his tunic, and you actually saw it. So we have 2 more to go. Unless I'm missing something. Hello, Batya Ilana. Welcome.
Hi. Thank you.
Hello. For sure. Thanks for joining. So we have here 2 more clothing. Did we miss something? We have the ephod, we have the apron, we have the choshen mishpat, we have the robe, and we have the golden plates, the forehead plate. We have the hat, and we have the belt. And the tunic. Oh, I forgot the tunic. Okay, so we did the tunic. So we have 1 more to go for the high priest. And let's see that inside the verses. Verse 40. So before we get to the 8th garment of the high priest, now we move on to the rest of the Kohanim, which the rest of the Kohanim are the regular Kohanim, not the high one. Not today, but in today's Chumash, they are just Aaron's sons. So for the regular priests, you're going to make, as Rashi points out, 4 garments, only 4, not 8. What are the 4? We have the tunic, as we saw in the picture of then you make them a belt. On top of that, umigba'is, they're going to have a hat, tasalahem, lechavid losefaris, for glory and for honor and for glory. Again, this points out how they were angelic looking. It points out also in the spheros, kavod is the sphere of malchus, teferes is the sphere of teferes, 2 different dimensions of the spheros. But we're not going to touch on that now. But the idea of, as Rashi points out, these are 3 of the 4 garments, and the 4th garment we'll talk about further down in the next few verses. Just to point out that the Kohen, the regular Kohen's hat, was called differently than the high priest's hat, and that is because it looked a little different. Whereas the high priest's hat was more turban-like, more round on the top, as you see here in Figure 19, the middle picture. Also the way the Kohen Gadol wore it was a little bit farther back on his head because he had to make way for his tefillin, which had to be on this hairline, and for the golden plate. So The regular priest, on the other hand, his was a little bit more with a tip, more like a Haman's hat, maybe. No. So we have there the Cohen's hat, which is more tippy. Here they have a picture with a tip. I don't know. Okay, more like that. All right, so it's called mikvah ois. And also for the Cohen, it was actually fully, his head went straight into this thing. It was fully down. He did not have to wear his tefillin the whole day. That is the differences. Let's see, verse 41. Moshe was commanded, once the garments were made, he was to put them on Aaron, your brother. He was supposed to dress them because that was initiating them into the service. Vespanav itoi, also to his sons. And then you should also anoint them with oil. And you should inaugurate them. You should make them holy. They should be ready to be kohanim, to serve me. Rashi says, Moshe had to put on all the clothing. He lists all of them again. So here we have all 8 clothing in the Rashi, and all the 4 clothing for the regular kohanim, and they would have to be anointed with oil. And Rashi points out that the inauguration process is in the verse here is referred to as umileisa es yadam. You should fill their hands. So the idea is that, interestingly, he points out that filling of the hands is a way of giving over a position. When somebody is taking on a position, they kind of take it with their hands. So it's actually a real way of inaugurating somebody. And he says, when they appoint a person to be in charge of something, the ruler puts in his hand a leather glove. So in Old French, it was called a ganto, and grants him authority with this, through that idea, through that procedure. So it was more like a physical procedure of umileisa es yadam, of inaugurating somebody, initiating somebody into a service. Kabbalistically, Moshe had to be doing all this because Aaron and his sons, by being kohanim, and their whole avoda was with the garments, and garments are very fancy. As we said, they're there for the splendor and for the honor. That represents the Jews, which are fancy Jews which have what to be grand about, have good behavior. But Moshe, who dealt with the essence of the Jew, and that's the whole parsha is dealing with Moshe's essence, because this entire parsha Tetzaveh, doesn't have Moshe's name once. And it starts off of V'ata Tetzaveh. It talks about the you, the essence of Moshe. So Moshe's essence, which is the essence of every Jew, is nothing to do with the fanciness of a Jew, nothing to do with the behavior of a Jew. It's just representing the intrinsic connection and bond that every Jew has with God, no matter if they do good, if they don't do good, if they behave, if they don't behave, if they dressed well, if they're not dressed well. It's just there, that they're God's child. And that's something which Moshe had to give over, inaugurate Aaron and the fancy servants, the fancy service people, fancy behaving people, and to bring into them this importance and the holiness of what a Jew really is. Nothing to do with behavior, nothing to do with what you do, what you don't do, but simply, not so simply, but the bond that every Jew has with God. And we're here with the last minute. Verse 42 is the last of the 8 garments for the high priest, and the last of the 4 garments for the little priest. You should make them pants. Simply, they need to have linen pants. It should be from their knee, from their waist down to their thighs. Rashi says it goes for both types of kohanim. And verse 43, and with this we finish. They have to wear these clothing when they come to the tabernacle. Whenever they're coming to serve, they gotta be wearing these clothing. And that way they will be doing the right thing, and they won't have the consequences of doing the wrong thing, of coming without the clothing. They have to have all their clothing on. This is a rule that they have to live by. And just to finish off with the picture, here you have figure 22. These are the trousers. They went till their knees from their waist. And this is something that you could not see because it was under the robe, of course. So that was the 8th or 4th garment. And with that, we finish today's Chumash. And I will save all the chat. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining me here today. And please God, we will see you tomorrow. Don't forget to
make me host.
Yeah, make you a host. Today is the 11th day of Adar, so it's the Tehillim is chapters 60 through 65.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Mandy.
Very welcome.
Very nice.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. You too. Bye. Terrific.
Thank you.
Hello, folks. Hello, Sharon. And
Hi,
Bach.
Rabbi.
Hello, how are you? Linda and Abigail and Denise and Irma.
Hi, Rabbi. We have a special guest today.
Yes.
No, I'm not talking about myself. I'm not that special. I'm talking about Moshe.
Moshe's here.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a very special guest. Absolutely. All right. Moshe. Oh, not only that, we got little Moshe there. Beautiful. Beautiful. All right. This is on Facebook also. Just make sure here. Yeah. Okay, wonderful. All right. Everybody's keeping well? Great. Okay. So let us do briefly some Tanya. Hello, hello, Batya. Welcome, welcome. Oh, we lost you. There you go. Okay. So many of you were earlier on the Tanya of the day. This is the fourth level of joy. The first level of joy in life is when we fix the things in life that we need to fix. When we fix those things, that brings us joy. You know why? Because when you own your life, you feel, that you've broken through something, you've humbled a negative thing, quality within you. There is a great joy in that engagement itself, literally. Then the Alter Rebbe says there's even greater joy than that. And that greater joy is that we shift our sense of identity. Now, when you're dealing with, with a crushing animal soul, you're focused on it, it's a downer. So now you've dealt with it, it brings greater light from darkness. But now the shift is that when I'm real true identity, the real me is my godly soul. And that's who I identify with. Now, and that itself is joy. The problem with that is that the divine soul, the way it is beyond the body, it's free. But once it comes to the body, it's imprisoned. And therefore, I need to extricate it. I need to release it from its imprisonment. And the act of doing that brings us joy in our lives. Why? Because just think of the metaphor. The Alter Rebbe gives, the metaphors always kind of bring it home, for me, for sure. What's the metaphor? Imagine that the prince of the king is in prison. And of course, the prince doesn't like it, not to be in prison and not to be in the king's palace. And being released from there is a great joy. So for us to have our prince, which is our divine soul, to be released from the imprisonment, which is the restrictions of the body and the animal soul, that is a great joy when we're aware of that. And remember, this is an important thing. Joy is not a feeling. It's not a feeling. It's a mindset. So there's an awareness here. The Alter Rebbe is giving us an awareness that if we bring that awareness to our heads and think it, what will happen? We will not feel it, We will be it. We will have joy. We'll have a mindset of joy. We'll have a disposition of joy, right? Not a feeling. That's an important thing. And that's why the awareness here, and that's what Chabad is. What's Chabad? Das, wisdom, understanding, knowledge. It's an intelligence, meaning it's an awareness in our minds of something. The what? Right now we're learning Tanya. We are releasing our divine soul from its imprisonment. The fact that we're aware of that itself should bring us a joy, right? So that's the third level. Second level was just identifying with the divine soul. Third level is that I am releasing it from its imprisonment. And that brings joy, just like the prince is being released from prison and going back to the palace, his father's home. Today in chapter 33 is not about, interesting, before it was about me and an awareness of my soul, that I've got a divine soul. Focusing on that. That brings joy. Focusing on that you can release it from its imprisonment. That'll bring you to a place of joy. Now it's about an awareness of God. What's the awareness of God? The true reality of God. True reality of God is not he's removed, he's way up there, right? The true reality of God is that God is gives vitality to a pen in a unique way versus an animal, versus a human, versus an eye, versus an ear, versus a hand. He encloses himself in things uniquely in everything. At the same time, he encompasses everything. And at the same time, everything is before him is nothing, meaning, because he's the only reality. Before he created the world, there's only him. After he creates the world, there's still only him, right? Like the ray of sun within the sun. Yes, when it comes out of the sun, it has a reality of a ray. And that ray takes 7-8 minutes to come down, that we can bask in it and have warmth. We can have energy from it. Absolutely. But while it's in the sun, and this is the metaphor, what is it? Nothing but a part of the sun. It's not a separate entity. So when we can think about that idea in our heads, that God isn't something distant and removed from me, but he's here in my reality. Not only my reality, he's the only reality, right? He's here. So the Alter Rebbe gives a metaphor for this. What's the metaphor? Again, we need metaphor to appreciate this. In other words, what we're saying is that God is close. Often we feel God is distant. You know why we feel God is distant? Because we're not understanding, or we're not focused on God about the reality of God. We're focused on God and what I want to get from him. So, by the way, parenthetically, the Alter Rebbe doesn't say this here, but give me a moment. I just need to open up the window and get some air in here. Did you know that spring is on the way? It's no more freezing water, freezing cold outside. It's nice. I mean, relatively speaking. Sorry. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol nivara. Chaim, everybody, I need some water. Maim Chaim, this gives life. I mean, God gives life. And through the water, he invigorates. That's the way he fills it, right? Here we're saying that the true reality of God is not what I want from him, right? It's like, so I'm saying in human relations, right? So we in a human way, we look at another person and what do you have from that person, is ultimately in a certain way how you even define that person, right? And we do, and therefore, if the person's giving me things in my life right now, what do? We feel close. Now, I'm not getting what I want from that person right now. I feel distant. By the way, we do that with God too. When God's giving me the things I want, I feel close to him. When he doesn't, I feel distant. But that's erroneous. That's not our faith. That's not what we believe. We believe that God is very near to us at all times because he's the only true reality. So that means he's really near. What does that mean? That's a mindful thing, right? We have to rewire the way we think. What does that mean? And so the metaphor, and our problem is that's a very abstract idea. So the Alter Rebbe wants to bring it down into a way that's not abstract, that it comes real for us. How? Imagine, we're simple people. Imagine the King of Kings. No, not the King of Kings, just a king, human king, right? Imagine you were living in, I don't know, in the times of Henry VIII, right? Or you're living in the times of whoever. And the king was going to come to your abode to stay over in your place. Now you might get a little nervous because you got to clean up your place, but imagine that your place is impeccably clean, right? It's simple, but it's impeccably clean. What an excitement you would have. What kind of joy would you have? What kind of feeling of closeness would you have knowing that the king is coming to stay in your home? Wow. I'm not talking about the ego over here. Oh, I'm special, and you're going to go around town telling everybody. No, that's not the metaphor over here. It's a metaphor. What's the metaphor? That you're going to feel a closeness because the king of flesh and blood is going to lodge in your place together with you, right? Even though you're just a commoner. Well, God is the King of Kings. He's infinitely greater, obviously, than any king, and he dwells together with us in this world, with me and in me. With me because, of course, but in me because he's creating me. In me also. Why? Because now I'm allowing him to be in my headspace. Instead of me being in my headspace and I'm thinking always about me, here when I carve out a place and I'm thinking about that Hashem dwells within me, that develops a sense of closeness. God's not removed from me. That brings joy. Closeness brings joy in a person's life. When we feel distant, I remember once being in a place and I saw a sea of people, Chassidim even, and for whatever, it just looked like, sometimes you have a moment like that. You feel like, it's just a sea of, everybody looking the same and being the same, and there's and I felt a distance. Then I just saw one person, and I smiled, he smiled back to me, and I felt a closeness. I didn't feel a distance. Sometimes you're in a place, it could be a lot of people, and you just feel a distance for whatever reason, because wherever you're at, it doesn't matter. Just being that is like it's just, you can be with people and still feel distant. You can be very far away from someone and still feel close. That you're not distant. How could that happen? Because if you can have that with God, that you don't feel he's distant. Hey God, do you hear me? I need this. No. Not only does he hear you, but he's with you and within you. So when we have that notion, that brings a joy to our lives. I'm not talking about love here. It's not about love we're speaking about over here. There's a concept of love too, but that's not the point over here about love and awe towards God, right? The point is just nearness creates a joy. When you feel distant from someone, you feel cold, you feel removed, you don't have the same energy, you don't have the same headspace, your heart's not, truly focused and connected. But when there's a nearness, there's a closeness. So what greater closeness? That Hashem is with you. You're going to be able to have a smile. Today's class. It's very powerful. Any questions? Wow, that's great.
Rabbi, I think sometimes we literally have to be purposely mindful of contemplating and meditating on Hashem to not feel that distance that we can feel like if we're in a crowd and feels like we're the only person standing there, so to speak. By meditating upon Hashem and contemplating his greatness, like you said, the joy that we receive from that, it's all encompassing.
Yeah, it's very powerful.
Different.
And that's what the Alter Rebbe is telling us over here, is that we do need to think about it. That's the point, exactly what you're saying. Exactly the point, is that we need to think about that. Because when we will think about it, we won't feel a distance. So sometimes we're going through a troubling thing, whatever it is, and we do feel a distance from ourselves. Forget about distance from others, right? Sometimes we just don't feel inside that we're connected to ourselves, so to speak, right? What do we need? Nearness, closeness. So if we can feel that Hashem's presence is there, how can we do that? That's exactly the point over here. When we realize that God is he's immanent in everything, he is beyond everything, right? Everything, all, like, there's three dimensions over here that we're speaking about, that what we have faith in, right? And God is God is it, gives vitality to a simple little pen. He gives vitality to an animal. He gives vitality to all of the galaxies and universes and everything, right? Above and beyond. And he does that equally on another level of all-encompassing. And furthermore, everything before him literally doesn't exist as a separate entity, but as a part of him. Excuse me. So we're part of God. We're not separate from him. We're not distant from him. He, not only that, he wants to dwell in me. How could he dwell in me? When I think this. Because is God found here? Yes. But he's not dwelling here. Actually, good point to, So, this doesn't have any quality to me. An animal doesn't have any quality to us. It's an animal. We have something unique. What is it? What is it that we have unique? Is that we could think about God and make space in our very self-centered, thought process of thinking about me, right? I might not be much, but it's all I think about. Even when you think about someone else, it's about me thinking of you and, in a certain way. But when we think about God, and that he is the true reality, and I'm really not separate and a part of him. There's nothing outside of him. I'm like a ray of sun within the sun, right? One metaphor. Or I am like the king that's coming to my home to lodge in my home, meaning I'm allowing God to lodge within. What's my home over here? My headspace. Not really in me, because that, of course, is giving me vitality. But in my headspace, no, I'm not giving him lodging there. Actually, no, I'm just thinking now the difference in the metaphor is very important. The ray of sun within the sun, right, has no choice to be but nullified to the sun because it's a part of the sun. Do I have a choice to be nullified to God? My body is. What's the proof? Because my body is getting vitality from God. I'm not creating it. It's not coming from anywhere else but from God. So it for sure is. But in my thoughts, it could be totally devoid of God, right? I have to allow him to dwell there. How? Because I'm thinking about him and his true reality. Welcome, Aaliyah, and welcome, Katie. Are you is this an early masquerade, Aaliyah?
I'm getting in the mood.
Great. Great. So think about this. This is really phenomenal. It just, it's coming to me now. Actually giving you the class even better now than I did earlier from this discussion is a quite a phenomenal thing, is that I'm allowing God to dwell in me, right? Where? In my head, instead of, that he's outside of me in my head. So I'm creating that closeness because I'm recognizing the true reality of him. And by recognizing that, then he is not just with me, but within me. and not just within me and my body and giving me, yes, through the water over here, giving vitality, but in my headspace, I'm allowing him to dwell there. That's a choice I'm making. When I think this, that's powerful. I mean, think of that. Right? And maybe that's the kind of the metaphor of the commoner who is now making room for the king to come into his place. The ray of sun isn't making place for itself in the sun, right? And that's what the uniqueness of that metaphor. The ray of sun has no choice to be but, right? And in a sense, we have no choice either. I have no choice to be but a part of God. Now, the difference is that in my headspace, I'm living with that. I'm thinking that, I'm meditating upon, I'm contemplating it. Oh, then now I'm creating a dwelling place, which dwelling here means that God is revealed within me. God that he's giving vitality to this pen is not revealed. And even giving vitality to me, that's not revealed. It's a reality, but it's not, what's revealed? You think it, that it's something that is really there, a part of you in your headspace. Oh, okay. Clarify things for me better. Thank you. Okay. Any questions on that? Okay. So let's move on. I want to now do a sikha. Purim is here. So I want to do a sikha. Should I just read it in from the translation from the English, or should I say it first outside so you can get the gist of it? What would be better for you? What would be, bring greater clarity? Batya, unmute yourself.
I said both.
So first, maybe I'll explain it outside, and then I'll give the basic idea outside. Okay. Okay. Or maybe I'll show the. Hold on. Let me see over here. Sorry, one sec. Okay, there's too much here. Okay, so we're going to see in the Talmud, there's two Talmuds by there. There's the Jerusalem Talmud and the Babylonian Talmud. Jerusalem Talmud was written somewhere in the 4th century, the Babylonian Talmud, the 5th century, approximately. And they speak about a distinction between and how we celebrate this holiday. Okay, there's celebrating the holiday, as we will see, something that Esther prompted on her own. It was sanctioned by the sages of the day, with the Sanhedrin, but it was prompted by her. And then there was something that was prompted by Esther and Mordecai together that was also then became part of the holiday. What did they sanction together? They sanctioned together that this day should be celebrated. It should be celebrated. Should be celebrated, right? The celebration, we'll get into that later, what that, right? It's an important day to celebrate, whatever that means, okay? There's different components to that, which we'll get to. Then there is that Esther, what she brought to the table herself. She said not only should be celebrated, but it should be celebrated with a narrative a story. The story of Purim, right? Then, as a second point, she said, not only should it be a story of Purim, but this story should be canonized and be part of the biblical literature, meaning part of Ksuvim, what we call the writings. We have Tanakh, right? Tanakh is Torah, Nevi'im, Ksuvim. Torah is the 5 books of Moses. Nach is the prophets, starting from Joshua to the 12 minor prophets, including Samuel, the stories of King David and King Solomon and so on, right? And then we have Ksuvim. Ksuvim is like Tehillim, and Megillah of Esther. So Esther said not only should there be a story told about this, but a second point that she made is that it should be written and canonized and be part of Torah teachings, holy Torah teachings. Okay? So we need to understand why, a few things. We'll see. Each Talmud brings a different focus. Why does each Talmud bring a different focus? Furthermore, or even more so, why is it that only Esther brought up the idea that there should be a narrative, that there should be a written document of Purim? Why didn't Mordecai, after all, in the Academy Awards, we have the best actor and the best actress, right? So, and they work together and everything. So why didn't they work together on this, that there should be a narrative and that should be canonized and should be part of the Ksuvim? It was prompted by Esther. Mordecai agreed, right? But why didn't he prompt it together with her? They did prompt together that it should be a holiday. That was together. So we need to understand that distinction. How come? Where's that coming from? Is that clear? Furthermore, we have to understand the distinction that Mordecai as a private person, as he to himself, I guess you call him, or as Mordecai is Mordecai, right? Whatever that means, which we'll see, right? It must mean that he wasn't, for whatever reason, the one to prompt together with Esther that this should be a narrative. By the way, just to give you context on this, the story of Hanukkah, which is another rabbinic holiday, right? There's no narrative to it. It's not written for generations, right? Give me 1 second. It's one of our students who I'm missing. I'm teaching and I'm missing one of my dozen favorite students. Gotcha. Call me after the class. Okay. Okay. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Okay. Chaim. So as a Mordecai is Mordecai, he doesn't prompt this, right? But as part of the Sanhedrin, the high Jewish court, he's in agreement. So we need to understand what's the distinction in his role as he himself and in his role as part of the Jewish high court. Is that all clear? Yeah? No problems? Make sense? Right? I need some more thumbs up. Abigail, Richard, amazing. Leslie, Sharon, Aliyah. All right, look at that. Oh, Aliyah, come on, we need to see that.
Rabbi,
I'm here, sorry.
Rabbi, you didn't.
Sorry, Sharon, you were saying. Thank you, Aliyah.
I asked you a question on the chat.
You know what? It's hard for me. I'm sorry. It's hard for me to focus on the chat. I have a very funny angle of it that it's not clear to me. My
okay.
apologies. So is it?
Should I ask you now or later?
What about when we are about to magic moments and Hashem is not? Oh, okay. So that was Tanya. Yeah, not now. I'm sorry that I didn't see that. Okay, we'll deal with it later if you don't mind. Okay. Okay, my apologies. I just seeing it now. Okay. Okay. Are we good so far? Excellent. Okay, so these are some of the questions that we need to understand. So we'll understand this by understanding that the Talmud says something interesting about Esther. They call, the Talmud calls her, that she's metaphorically the dawn of day. What's the dawn of day? Is the end of night. It's the threshold between the end of night and the beginning of daytime, right? So the Talmud says because it was a threshold between the miracles that would be recorded and the miracles that are not recorded anymore. She's that threshold. Meaning, after the story of Purim, Megillah Esther, all miracles that occurred to the Jewish people collectively are not canonized. They are, it ends with Esther. Like Hanukkah, the Talmud tells us, right? That it is a different sort. Abigail, you had a question? Nope.
No,
Okay.
sorry.
Okay. I thought I saw you. I mean, I didn't see you, but looked like you were. Okay.
No, my finger accidentally touched on the
Okay. Not a problem. Not a problem. Okay. Okay. So Esther is about this morning light that she is compared to, which we need to understand what that is, right? So the Rebbe explains like this. What is the distinction between Esther and Mordecai and how they dealt with the decree against the Jewish people, a decree from Haman, right? What do we see? Mordecai was an individual leader of the Jewish people who was responsible for their spiritual welfare, right? And in that sense, who is he? Like a Rebbe, the Rebbe of his time, and therefore he, there's a decree, gather all the Jews, right? Even though Esther was a part of it, but Mordecai in actuality is the one who gathered all the Jews. He's the one who wanted to deal with the source of the decree. What was the source of the decree? The Jewish people, their what's it called? Assimilation, right? Their assimilation. So he needed to stop that assimilation, gather the Jews publicly, right? Pronouncing publicly their faith, and therefore bring, to nullify the decree. Esther, on the other hand, she lived in the house of the king. And everything about her was dealing with, not in the Jewish community, not with Jews, because she didn't live with Jews. She lived in the royal palace, right? So she had to deal more in the here and now, in the natural restrictions of what it means to live in the palace of a non-Jewish king, Achashverosh. And her method then of dealing with this was dealing with Ahasuerus himself to nullify the decree. So Mordecai rather, is dealing with it, so to speak, in a spiritual nature, right? Because it began as a spiritual thing that evolved into this world, into Haman being allowed to make a decree against the Jewish people. He realized that the way you have to annul it is through the spiritual strengthening of the Jewish people. He being amongst the people, for the people, right? By the people. So therefore he is dealing in that manner to nullify the decree. Esther is not dealing with a spiritual reality. She's dealing with a very, first of all, not in a non-Jewish, she's in a non-Jewish environment, in the palace of the king, dealing with life on those terms, which is a very different perspective, right? Is that clear? So from that perspective, what do we have? Mordecai then sees the miracle of Purim. How does he see the miracle of Purim? In a spiritual way. He wanted to make Purim like Yom Kippur. After all, Yom HaKippurim. Yom Kippur, right, is like a day of Purim. There's a relationship between them. But what's the relationship? The relationship is very simple. Yom Kippur is a spiritual day. Purim, really, from Mordecai's perspective, is a spiritual day. Right? It's a spiritual day. Why? Because it's mainly about the Jews who got their act together. And because they got their act together, that nullifies the decree. So therefore, he wanted to make it like Yom Kippur. It should be a holiday. It should be even like a holiday like Yom Kippur. That you like Yom Kippur, that you don't work. Right? That's how he sees it. Not only that, he sees it from his perspective, as the sages say in the Talmud, that this, whatever we accomplished at Matan Torah, by the giving of the Torah, that we accepted God, we didn't totally accept him by Matan Torah. We said Nasa v'nishma, we accepted him, but we were compelled, like a mountain over our heads. We were compelled to, right? Shotgun wedding. We were compelled. What happened by Purim? We weren't compelled. As a matter of fact, if anybody opted out from being Jewish, the decree of Haman didn't apply to them. No one opted out. Everybody was in. So really, this is, as the sages say, kimu v'kiblu kiblu kvar, that we kept and sustained what we were already given earlier, but now we really owned it. We owned our relationship with God. We're truly connected. More than in Matan Torah. That we're ready to go on real self-sacrifice. For a whole year we stood on self-sacrifice, right? Because till the decree was they could fight back and so on, right? So he sees the whole thing as a spiritual thing. Esther, on the other hand, she sees the facts on the field. Because she's in the king of the, she's not the spiritual leader as Mordecai. She sees the facts on the field. And what are the facts on the field? Hey, Haman wanted to destroy from the elders to the children, from the men to the women, from everybody. And what did he want to destroy? Annihilate the body of the Jew, right? Is that clear? So with this, then we can understand Mordecai and Esther both say that this should be a holiday. Yes. They're both in agreement of the holiday. But Esther is adding something more. For Mordecai, the holiday should be more of remembering, thinking about, what the Jews did in being saved because they rededicated themselves to Hashem, right? It's more of a spiritual nature. Therefore, spiritual things are more in your mind, in your thoughts. Esther, on the other hand, says, no. We got to tell the story over. We got to speak it. Can't just be in our minds and make it spiritual. We have to tell the story. Not only have to tell the story, we have to write the story, which is true action, like, ink on parchment. We have to tell this, right? So Mordecai's emphasis is on the spiritual nature of the holiday. She says, no, tell it, which speaking is, the Talmud tells us, like a small action. And not only tell it, write it. And that's two things that she wants, right? That she adds. Tell it and write it. Because it needs to be committed in writing. When it's committed to writing, it's an action. Because it's more about the action of what occurred. The action of annihilation. So it's countered, so to speak, or it's celebrated, rather, through the action of writing the story. Telling the story and writing the story. Is that clear? Now, as for Mordecai, although Mordecai on his own, he's the spiritual leader, so he's seeing it from that perspective. But in the end, he agrees with Esther. How come? Because as part of the Sanhedrin, right, the sages, what is the point of the sages? The point of the sages is to come down to the level of the people where they're at. From the people's perspective, what happened? How did they view it? It's like, every Jew, how do they tell the story? How do you tell the Jewish story? They wanted to kill us. We won. Let's eat. Right? There's a spiritual component over here. We're simple people, so we see it from a simplistic point of view. As Esther saw that, right? So she adds something from the simplistic point of view of the earthy kind of way, right? The sages in the Talmud, in the Sanhedrin, their job is to appreciate the Jewish people where they're at. And when you give a psak din in Jewish law, right, you have to do it in accordance to, where the people are at. And therefore they are in agreement. Mordecai on his own, though, what is his job? His job is to uplift the people. He's a spiritual leader, so he's got to bring them up to a higher standard. And from his perspective, the higher standard is, hey, celebrate what the Jewish people did in their tshuva. It's a spiritual story more than it is a, physical reality that happened. This is what, from Mordecai's perspective. Is that clear? I did that all outside. I didn't do anything inside. So tomorrow we'll continue. Any questions on that? What we need to understand is the different Talmuds on how they see it differently. We didn't get there yet, right? And to understand more deeply the uniqueness of Esther, that she is metaphorically called the Shachar, meaning the morning light, right? She is that morning light, that is, and what that means in her personality or in her soul, and how that reflects in all of this, which will give us a deeper understanding of why she, we'll see from a Kabbalistic point of view, of why she saw things the way she did. We explained it in a very human terms right now, but we didn't explain it in soulful terms, right? She saw the facts on the field, so to speak. Oh, annihilation. Mordecai saw the cause for the facts on the field, right? Facts on the field are not facts on their own. They're not independent of what their antecedent is, what precedes it, what caused it. There was something that caused it, right? Mordecai was attuned to that, lived with that. Esther was focused on, so why? What's the difference? Okay, we're going to get into deeper understanding the distinction, and in a soulful manner, and then we'll have greater clarity. Any questions? We're good. All right. To be continued, God willing, tomorrow. God bless you all. Thank you for joining.
Thanks, Rabbi.
God bless you.
Thank you, Rabbi
Wonderful day.
Chaim.
Take care. Oh, just folks, what's going to happen on Purim, on Friday, we're going to make our 12 o'clock, instead of a class, it's going to be a Purim Suda that we're going to make all together on Zoom. We're going to invite everybody to come and join. Everybody should have some bread to eat, to make a maitzi, and whatever foods you want to eat, of course, at 12 noon. We're going to make a celebration. We'll say l'chaim together. We'll, you should have some coins so you can give for tzedakah. And of course, shalach manas. But, just to give you a heads up that Friday, we're going to do something together at our usual 12 o'clock noon time. All right. All right, folks. Katie, how's things in Texas? Everything's good.
Oh no, I still don't have water.
Oh
But
my
I'm the
God.
only one at my work.
Oh yeah, I feel terrible, and I just drank a whole cup.
It's okay. I mean, you have to just kind of make do, I suppose. But I don't think it's going to be for a while.
It might be for a while.
Yeah, because my apartment complex already had really bad piping. So, like most of the buildings, there's like lots of damage from all the pipes that broke.
Oh my
And
God.
I don't even hear people fixing pipes anymore. My water's just out. So I had to go to like a gym and shower, and then you just have to make do.
Good
Yeah.
luck. God bless you. I hope everything works out. Should be greater light that comes from darkness.
Yeah.
All right. Good luck.
Rabbi, can I say something really quick?
Sure. Go ahead.
I spoke with Rabbi Mindy, and I'm pretty sure he probably gave it to you. Also, a good mitzvah for during Purim is to give tzedakah to the poor. And for Texas, I gave him 3 links of the different Chabads in San Antonio, Austin, and Houston that are in need for our Jewish people, and we need to be there for them. And if we can, we need to
Okay, great.
potentially
Thank
give
you.
tzedakah to them.
Yes, absolutely. That's a great idea. Thank you for bringing that up. Thank you. That's great. Okay, definitely. We'll send out links. All right, folks. Have a wonderful day. Thank you for joining. Be well.
Bye.
Bye-bye.